According to Elizabeth Diane Downs, she and her 3 children were shot by a strange man.
I never wanted to become something like that, something like her.
Diane Downs shot her 3 children and herself in the arm, then drove them all to the hospital where her 7-year-old daughter died. She claimed she was the victim of a carjacking, but that was only her first story.
Mrs. Downs was wounded in the left arm and was able to drive the children to the hospital that night.
A part of me was afraid that that's where I came from. Does that mean where I'm going?
Christie was shot first. 3-year-old Danny was shot in the back. 7-year-old Cheryl was shot twice from behind and died on the way to the hospital.
Over the weekend, rumors began to fly about
We have not overlooked any possible suspects.
Reporters covering the story were getting hints that Downs herself was a suspect.
What has occurred here is just inexcusable.
And the fact that I felt some sort of a connection to her was terrifying. I knew I could never do something like that.
But at night, when I close my eyes, I can see Christie reaching her hand out to me while I'm driving. That haunts me the most.
Diane Downs was a case that captured the imagination and the horror of people at the time.
Law enforcement officials say they're waiting for Christie to remember what happened that night.
This is the kind of story you just never forget.
Another chapter in what's been a very unusual crime story.
And to really understand it, you have to go all the way back to 1983, when it all happened.
This is Monsters.
Tonight, we confront a primal fear, a betrayal so profound it shatters the very foundation of human trust. The unimaginable evil of a mother. This is the chilling descent into the heart of a darkness that defies comprehension. A narrative where maternal love was not just absent, but actively turned into a weapon. We uncover the case of Diane Downs, a woman who, driven by selfish desires, attempted to murder her own 3 children.
Because I knew that I was the only person that was going to be able to tell them what happened when we got to the hospital. And when I got there, the first thing I said was, call the doctors. Second thing was the blood type. Third thing was call the cops, because they've got to find him.
What kind of monstrous intent lurks within a person capable of such an act? This isn't a story of accidental tragedy or a moment of fleeting rage. This is the cold, calculated narrative of a mother's ultimate betrayal, a crime so vile it leaves us questioning the very nature of humanity. Prepare yourself as we delve into the raw and disturbing truth behind a case that exposed the chilling evil within a mother's heart.
Yeah, here, take the keys. I mean, there's nothing I can do. You win because you have the gun. My kids are gonna die. And I'm not gonna let my kids die. And so instead of giving him the keys, I feigned throwing the keys.
Diane Fredrickson Downs was born in Arizona in 1955. From an early age, she exhibited traits that would foreshadow her future actions: a rebellious nature, a desire for attention, and a self-centered approach to life. She married Stephen Downs, and together they had 3 beautiful children: Cheryl, born in 1970, Christie, born in 1974, and Stephen Danny Downs, born in 1976. To the outside world, they might have appeared to be a normal family, but behind closed doors, Diane's life was a tempest of infidelity.
He was in control and I was not. And there was nothing I could do. And I stood there and I looked at Christie reaching, and the blood that just kept gushing out of her mouth. What do you do?
Narcissism and a desperate pursuit of fleeting relationships. After divorcing Stephen, Diane relocated her small family to Arizona and then to Springfield, Oregon in 1981, bringing with her a restless spirit and a dangerous disregard for consequences. It was in Oregon that Diane began an affair with a married man named Robert Knickerbocker. He was the focus of her obsession, and she was desperate for a future with him. But there was one insurmountable obstacle, one inconvenient truth that stood in the way of her selfish desires: her children. Robert had made it clear he did not want children in his life, and Diane, rather than choosing her children, began to formulate a plan so cold, so monstrous, that it chills you to the bone. The night of May 19th, 1983, would forever be etched in infamy. Diane Downs claimed she was driving her 3 children home from a visit with a friend on a secluded country road outside Springfield, Oregon.
When this man shot my daughter, my first reaction was to snap back to my childhood, to the pain that had happened to me back then, my marriage, my entrapment by society. This man was bigger than me. He was stronger than me. He had more power because he had a gun.
It was late, past 10 p.m. The children, Cheryl, Christie, and Danny, were asleep in the back seat. This quiet, ordinary journey was about to become the scene of an unspeakable horror. Orchestrated by the very person meant to protect them, Diane pulled her car over onto a desolate stretch of road. According to her later, carefully constructed lie, a bushy-haired stranger suddenly appeared, opened her car door, and shot all 3 of her children before shooting her in the arm.
And then the gun kept firing and firing and firing, and it was monotonous. It just kept going. It was like a slow motion picture.
She then claimed he drove off, leaving her bleeding with her dying children to somehow drive to a nearby hospital for help. But the truth was far more sinister. There was no bushy-haired stranger. There was only Diane, a mother filled with a chilling, calculated resolve. She reached into her purse, pulled out a .22 caliber handgun, and one by one, methodically shot her own children. First Christie, then Danny, then Cheryl. The screams of her children, if there were any, were silenced by the cold pop of the gun and the unspeakable pain of betrayal.
And this is something that I did not recall when I was explaining to the cops, because it wasn't like a movie when I was telling them. I was telling them what happened, the important details. He shot my kids, I pushed him, I ran.
Cheryl, just 7 years old, was shot once in the chest and died at the scene. Christie, 8 years old, was shot in the head but miraculously survived, though she suffered a devastating stroke. Danny, 3 years old, was shot in the back, leaving him paralyzed from the waist down. After committing these monstrous acts, Diane then shot herself in the arm, a superficial wound to support her fabricated story. The premeditation, the coldness of her actions, are almost beyond human comprehension. Diane Downs arrived at the Mackenzie Willamette Hospital in Springfield with her critically injured children. Her demeanor was disturbingly calm, almost theatrical. She spun her elaborate tale of the bushy-haired stranger, but inconsistencies began to emerge almost immediately. Her story, though rehearsed, was riddled with holes that seasoned investigators quickly picked apart.
When he swung around, he was pointing, when he swung around, it hit the tips of my fingers. The gun hit the tips of my fingers, and that snapped me, and I went.
The lack of blood splatter on Diane, despite her proximity to her children when they were shot, raised immediate red flags. Her car was inexplicably clean for a vehicle where 3 children had been shot. Her claim of having to drive to the hospital was contradicted by the fact that she had driven past a populated apartment complex, closer than the hospital, without seeking help. Furthermore, the single bullet wound to her arm was suspiciously clean, a mere flesh wound. Unlike the devastating injuries inflicted upon her children, investigators began to suspect the mother, not the stranger. They observed her unsettling lack of grief, her bizarre behavior in the hospital, and her willingness to discuss her children's injuries in graphic detail with reporters.
I honestly don't believe that children need fathers. And they're nice to have around sometimes when they can do things to help you, but when they are mentally abusive, when they are harsh.
Almost reveling in the attention, the true turning point came from within her own family, from the most innocent of witnesses. As Christie Downs, the 8-year-old survivor, slowly recovered from her severe injuries, doctors and investigators meticulously worked to help her regain her memories. The The stroke had left her with speech difficulties, but her tiny voice held the power to shatter her mother's elaborate lie. In a series of interviews, Christie's fragmented memories slowly pieced together a devastating truth.
Did your childhood affect your attitude toward men?
That has a lot to do with it. That had a lot to do with it for many, many, many years. I hated men with a passion.
Christie testified that there was no bushy-haired stranger. She described how her mother had pulled over the car, how her mother had shot them, and how her mother had told them not to tell anyone. This testimony, coming from a child who had endured unimaginable trauma, was the unequivocal nail in Diane Downs' coffin.
2 months after that, I found out that Steve was exactly like my father, but it took me 3 years to finally say, I can't take it anymore. He really, really is. He's not going to change.
It was the ultimate betrayal confirmed by the ultimate survivor. On June 17, 1984, Diane Downs was found guilty of 1 count of murder, 2 counts of attempted murder, and 2 counts of criminal assault. She was sentenced to life in prison plus 50 years.
They're going to change. He didn't change. And that's why, even though we were married for 8 years, only 3 of it was not tolerable. It wasn't tolerable, but that was the only 3 that I tried.
With the possibility of parole after 25 years. The judge, in delivering the sentence, famously said, "Diane Downs will never be paroled, not in my lifetime, not in anyone's lifetime," a stark recognition of the profound evil she embodied. The case of Diane Downs remains one of the most horrifying examples of a mother's ultimate betrayal. Her motive was chillingly selfish. Her children were simply an inconvenience to her new romantic relationship.
How did your childhood affect you?
Everything that happens to you as a child contributes to how you turn out as an adult. To be honest, it made me a better person because I know all the mistakes.
The calculated cruelty, the coldness of her act, and her blatant disregard for human life, especially the lives of her own flesh and blood, expose a darkness that is truly unfathomable. Diane Downs is a female criminal who represents the very worst of humanity. Her story is a stark reminder that evil can wear the most unexpected faces, and that the bonds of family, once broken by such vile acts, leave scars that never truly heal. Her heinous crime is a story that needed to be told, unflinchingly and honestly, to ensure such horrors are never forgotten. Thank you for joining us on The Female Criminal. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe for more raw and honest true crime stories, and hit the notification bell. We'll see you in the next one.